Kia ora and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with New Zealand artists. I'm your host, Mandy Yarkich. These conversations are intimate, uplifting and insightful. The guests on this show have absolutely enriched my life, and I'm sure their stories will have the same effect on you. Thank you so much for joining me to listen to these amazing people speak about what drives them, the way they work, and their personal takes on life. This week I'm speaking with artist Rachael Mayne. Rachael is an artist with a passion for wild flower fields, gardens and all things floral, living in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland. Rachael juggles a career as a clinical psychologist and a professional artist, as well as being the mother of 2 young children.
Probably one of the things that helps the most is I try where I can, to keep everything quite separate. So the days where I'm in the clinic, it's all about that. And the days where I'm in the studio, it's all about that work. And I kind of keep those confined to those days. If I get overlap and I'm trying to do, psych work on the day I'm meant to be in the studio or vice versa, it can get really confusing and overwhelming.
Rachael mainly paints impressionistic and abstract pieces and draws inspiration from the colours and forms surrounding us in nature. She loves to experiment with new colour palettes, as demonstrated in her vibrant abstract pieces. Rachael is also fascinated by the use of light, layers and texture, and how this can be used to portray depth. In this episode, we discuss how she manages her clinical psychology practice and her art practice, how one of her 3-second reels on Instagram went viral with 7 million views, which created 30,000 more followers, her love of colour and light, and the experience of approaching an art gallery with her work for the very first time. You can see Rachael's gorgeous work on our blog, creativematters.co.nz, and also on her website, rachaelmayneart.com. Hello, Rachael.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
It's lovely to see you. So we met a couple of weeks ago at the opening at Turua Gallery of your one of your group shows. So it was nice to just kind of connect with you and put a face to the name. And now here we are. So, it's lovely to see you.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, you've got a pretty interesting story. You're a practicing clinical psychologist as well as an artist, as well as a mum of a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So you've got a very busy life. So it will be really interesting to hear all about your story. And I'm quite fascinated to know how you can juggle that kind of pretty full-on career with your art practice. I'd love to hear all about it from the beginning. So where were you born and where did you grow up?
Yep, so I grew up in a little place called Te Puke, which is near Papamara and Mount Maunganui. And while I was in high school, my mum was the local art teacher at the intermediate school. So we had this upbringing full of creativity, drawing, paint, you name it. Which was awesome. So I think that probably started off the interest in drawing and painting. I have memories of sitting at the bench top when I was about 4 or 5 and just trying to draw princesses over and over and over until they felt right. So I think even as a little kid, I really liked it.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was kind of just always there and part of our lives, and we sort of painted a lot at home and things like that. In high school, I took all the art subjects, but was also really into science, and was a bit of a geek for research and science and biology and things like that. So it was a bit of a weird mix, really, because they kind of didn't always gel.
Yeah, that's really funny, isn't it? Because I guess it's a left brain, right brain kind of scenario.
Yeah. And as I went through high school, I think in 5th and 6th form, so I was going to show my age, but I was back kind of school C bursary days. And I had this fantastic teacher for fifth form and sixth form who just really like nourished painting and like got me painting on big canvases and really stretching myself, and kind of, I think, helped me to build a lot of confidence with painting and got me into oil paints, and just absolutely loved it. Really liked School C and sixth form. And then she got promoted to being like the Bay of Plenty, I think like arts advisor or someone. So we lost her as a teacher, and we ended up having this lovely teacher, but she hadn't taught painting before. And I remember in seventh form having all these ideas of what I wanted to paint, but she said, I haven't actually taught. I think I wanted to do portraits and figures, but she said, I haven't really had any experience with that, so you might have to do still life. And
oh, no.
It's funny because right now I'd be more than happy to paint a still life, but back then it just didn't interest me.
Oh, what a shame, though. I mean, you were needing that kind of guidance, I guess, and you couldn't get it.
So I just got a bit lost, and then we were sort of encouraged to abstract it, and I just had no idea what I was doing. I look at my seventh form boards and they're actually quite awful. Like, obviously, like trying to do something with them, but it just didn't work. So I kind of, after that year, sort of felt like, I didn't want to ruin my love for painting. So it kind of put me off studying it for a bit. And I was really interested in science, so sort of took the more medical route and went down to Otago. Was planning on wanting to get into pediatrics, but I was only 17, and in quite all honesty, I probably had no idea what I really wanted to do. I think a school career advisor kind of suggested, you want to work with people, you like science, you might as well do health science. So I went down there and did like the first year, and about halfway through realised that I'm terrible with blood and vomiting.
Oh, no.
I think I actually had like a fainting episode in a lab with deer blood.
Oh, no, that's bad.
No, this isn't working. And I also didn't really enjoy chemistry very much. So I went and spoke to somebody and ended up going down the psychology path, and then kind of never looked back and really loved that. Moved back up to Auckland, I think, after 4 years, and then did the postgrad doctorate in clinical psychology.
Oh, wow.
And throughout that, I painted a lot. Like I remember in Dunedin, it was sort of like a part-time job. I'd paint and hang work in cafes and things like that. And then in my summers back in Tauranga, I used to paint like murals and bits and pieces, which I just thought was fantastic that I could paint. And back then I remember I did this like wall-sized mural for $500, and I remember thinking that was so much money as a student.
Oh, but isn't it good that you actually managed to hold on to your love of painting, even though there was, you were a bit discouraged in your seventh form year, but you kind of hung in there, and then that was going along all through your study time. So it kind of was still very much in the background. My flatmate was studying fine arts, and I had another flatmate that liked to paint. So we just used to sit out in the sun and have drinks and paint on a Saturday afternoon. So good.
Quite cool. So kind of, kept up the interest in painting right through. I think when I was doing my doctorate, it was really busy. It was quite intensive writing a doctorate thesis and stuff like that. So that was probably the only time in my life I didn't paint. And then I met my now husband, and he was like, gosh, you talk about art all the time, and you all about painting, and I haven't seen you paint. So he brought me an easel and a canvas for my birthday.
Oh, wow.
And that then kind of started it off again.
Yeah.
I kind of from then on just more painted as a hobby and in my downtime, and kind of, bits and pieces, did the odd course and life drawing class here and there. But very much was focused on my career as a clinical psychologist.
Yeah, and I can imagine that would be pretty consuming, so quite hard to have the headspace.
Yeah, it was, and I think
art.
Yeah, and back then I was learning. I was still I was an intern psychologist, and it's a lot to learn and kind of grow. So, my mind was very much on that. So how long, that would have been 2011. We moved to the UK, I think it was 2014. We spent 3 years over there, and I had this really nice role where I worked 4 days and did like slightly longer days and had a Friday off every week. So it was like absolute dreamboat, and I would just wander around London going to different art exhibitions and art museums and things like that, and then paint on a Friday. So I kind of started doing a bit more painting over there.
That would have been so amazing to have that time.
Yeah, and I think it was also just influenced by, where we were in the world, and we were doing lots of weekend trips to like Paris and Amsterdam and seeing these amazing exhibitions and going to, famous galleries. And so I was finding all that was really influencing me, like this pull into creativity. So I think that was the first time I was like, oh, I really miss this. Yeah. And it was the first time that I was sort of questioning, I wonder how I can kind of make this part of my job, because there was no way I could make my clinical psych role more creative. I sort of do more, at that point of time, I was working in hospitals, and it was more like medical. So I wasn't doing art therapy or anything like that. So when we moved back to New Zealand in 2017, and then we got married and had kids, and it wasn't until I had my son that I really got into painting again. And he was a good napper. My second one wasn't. He would do these lovely he'd do these lovely 2 or 3 hour naps. So all of a sudden I had this block in the day where I was free. So I would kind of sit down and paint, and I got quite good at coming and going from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like prior to that, I was very much of the mentality, if I'm going to do a painting, I need like a whole day, and I've got to, give all this time and energy to it. Whereas I got quite good at like doing a little bit and leaving it. And so kind of, I think I'm just trying to remember the timing of it. I think it was around then I sort of started an Instagram page and was mainly selling to like friends and family friends. And then I finally did a piece that I felt was okay for me then. And so I took the bold move and took it to a gallery. It was like a little beachside gallery in New Zealand where my family have a place. But it sat there for like a year.
Oh, which is so discouraging, isn't it? When you've been brave enough to actually go there, and then you're like, oh no, maybe I've made a mistake. It's such a tricky time for artists.
Just starting to think, oh, maybe I could try, doing this professionally. And then I got that awkward email, sorry, your art hasn't sold, you have to pick it up.
Oh, and you were so brave to actually do that. I mean, that's a big step to take it. So it was really just you getting to the point where you thought, actually, I'm really proud of this. I feel like this is a really good painting. And that's what sort of encouraged you. So what was that painting?
It was one of Magnolias, and it was sort of like quite similar to some of the work I'm doing now. And I kind of just felt like I'd found my style, really. And prior to that, I'd just experimented and done all sorts of different things, portraits, sort of figures, abstract art, all sorts of bits and pieces just for fun. But this was the first time I kind of found something that felt like me. So I remember thinking, oh, maybe this is way harder than I thought it would be. And it was really humbling. And then I had my daughter 2 years. So there's 2 year gap between my kids, and she didn't nap so well. And it was just way busier with two. So I painted a little bit. And then throughout that year, I think was selling a little bit through this shop called Good Thing in Mount Albert. They're a lovely little store that have art and cool bits and pieces. And I was building a little bit of a following on Instagram and sort of people asking for commissions and things like that. So I sort of thought, okay, I'll ignore that voice in my head that's saying, this is too hard, you're not good enough for this. And I thought, by that point it was so fun and I was getting so much joy out of it that I sort of felt like I didn't have the option to give it up. I was like, I feel like I've kind of, discovered this new limb that I've always had, and I kind of need to keep using it. So I took another bold move and I got in touch with another gallery who I'd been following and kind of really loved the art that they were showing. And I thought, I think that could be a good match for me. So I sent a couple of photos.
Good. And that's so good that it didn't crush you, that first sort of rejection, I guess.
Yeah, it got close to it. And I thought, no, I love this a bit too much. I'm not ready to give it up yet. Let's give it another try. And I was like, gosh, if I was working with clients at work around fear of failure, I definitely wouldn't be saying to them to give up. So
yeah, exactly.
Practice what I preach. So I went into Tour Gallery and took a painting in, sort of thinking, oh God, they're going to think I'm such an amateur. And I was like, do I tell them that I work as a psychologist as well? Is that normal? Or are they going to think I'm not committed? And no, I'll just be fully honest about it. And it got in there and they liked the painting, thankfully. And they were like, oh, we've actually got a few other artists here that work in health as well and sort of do both. They paint a couple of days and they work in health. They find that really helpful, that kind of having that outlet to paint. So I thought, oh, great, I'm not the only person that's, doing this weird juggle of two jobs. And then, things just kind of grew from there, which was great. And when my daughter turned 1, I said to my husband, how would you feel about me giving, this a crack professionally and kind of having a day or two where I paint and the kids are in preschool? And he said, we're not quite at an age and phase, Rachel, where we're wealthy enough for you to have a hobby day, which I wholeheartedly agreed with, with a mortgage and things like that. And I said, no, I'm serious about this. I want to make it work. I'm going to really focus on this being about a business as well. And he was like, go for it. Wholeheartedly support you. I believe in you. See if you can make it work. So I said, why don't I try it for a year? And if it fails miserably, I'll go back to just doing it as a hobby.
Yeah, but that's so brilliant. And it's so good that you've got that flexibility in your job that you could actually work 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I think that is a real perk. And I was working in private practice at that time, and it meant I could be a bit more flexible with my hours and pick and choose when I work, which is really good.
That's so good. And I want to talk to you more about how your psychology practice fits with your art practice. But just going back to the gallery, what work did you take in to Rua at the beginning?
So I still remember it was a big daisy field, which if you'd kind of know my work, everyone sort of associates my work a lot with daisies. I don't really know where that came from, but it was a big daisy field that I took in. And the first few pieces that I took to Truro Gallery were very much like meadows and flower fields and things like that.
Yeah. And then did they organise for you to be part of a group show after that?
Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what it was. It might have been, so this was only 2 years ago. I think it might have been the Bloom exhibition, like a floral exhibition, which I guess was quite fitting.
Yeah, that's so good, isn't it? I mean, it's really encouraging, I think, for listeners who haven't sort of taken that step to galleries to hear that story, that you just got to kind of be brave enough to head in with your work and hope for the best, and then also be prepared for potential, rejection, I guess.
Yeah. And it was a really different experience. Like that piece sold that day that I dropped it.
Wow.
It was the one before it sat for a year. And then
that's really interesting.
Out. So just goes to show it's worth thinking about, galleries that might be a good match for your work and kind of, I think the great thing about Truro Gallery is they're really brilliant at showcasing us and selling our work and databases and things like that, which is really helpful.
That's right. Yeah, it's not just you relying on your contacts. You've got a whole other potential, through the gallery. Yeah, which is great. And did you actually kind of shop around to different galleries and then find the one that you felt fitted you best?
Not really. That was my first go at it. And I had just been following a few on Instagram and thought that looked like a good match, and sort of liked what they were doing with some other artists and how they'd promoted them. And
yeah, that's so good. And then, you've got such a lovely connection with them now.
Yeah. Now I live right next door, which is great.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to figure out your psychology practice and your art practice? What happened there?
Yeah, I feel like I've kind of, this year's been the first year I've really worked it out, because around that time we went into COVID and lockdowns. So during those lockdowns we had the first one we had a newborn and a 2-year-old, and then the last one we had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So it was all a juggle, and mental health got really busy in that one. So my work definitely didn't slow down. So last year I sort of just write off as being quite a weird year and really messy with lockdowns and COVID and all of that. So this year's kind of felt like the first year where we've been out of lockdown and back into normal routine and been able to figure out what that looks like. So I've kind of got to a place now where I've probably one of the things that helps the most is I try where I can, to keep everything quite separate. So the days where I'm in the clinic, it's all about that. And the days where I'm in the studio, it's all about that work. And I kind of keep those confined to those days. If I get overlap and I'm trying to do, psych work on the day I'm meant to be in the studio or vice versa, it can get really confusing and overwhelming.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then when I'm off with the kids, it's the same. It's my phone's off and I'm off with my kids today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really the only way to do it, isn't it? To have those sort of separate, keep them all separate, especially when, your children are so consuming and your psychology practice is so consuming. And you've kind of got to be in that right space in your head to be able to make art, really, don't you? So
yeah.
Do you find that if you're really busy and sort of got lots of stuff in your head, it is actually hard to switch off for your art days?
Yes and no. Sometimes I find the busyness is more the admin side of running an art business. So kind of like responding to emails and social media and things like that. That's the bit that I didn't initially factor in my head. I was like, I just can use the day for painting.
Yeah.
So that's probably the bit that I've now learned. I do that first thing in the morning, so I will kind of get that bit done and then spend the rest of the day painting for about 6 hours normally. So normally it's not too bad kind of with the juggle of everything. I've had to be really clear. So in my clinical work, my clients know that I only work 2 days and that I might not always be available straight away on days where I'm not at work and things like that. And when I'm, say, booking like a painting commission or something like that, I'm quite clear that I only work, 1.5 days painting, and it might take me a day or two to get back to you via email, or, this is how long this process will look. Because I find if I'm quite transparent about that, then people don't have expectations that, they can contact me and I'll be straight back to them, or, get frustrated when a painting takes 6 weeks, or,
Yeah, that's really smart. You really have to do that. And do you find sometimes in the evening you end up sort of sneaking in a little bit of Instagram work or, other things in your evening time?
Yeah. And that's quite hard. The bit I find trickiest probably is that because I love painting so much and it very much still feels like a hobby and like downtime, I get pulled into doing it around the clock.
Yeah.
And I've had to be a bit careful about that, because sometimes, if you're responding to emails and stuff like that, that's still your brain working and you're not having downtime. So I'll switch my phone off some evenings, or kind of catch myself doing it and be like, no, stop.
Yeah, it's tricky like that, isn't it? And I find that it's the same for me being self-employed with my business. I'm so passionate about my business and what I do. I always kind of thought to myself, well, it's fine to be working at night or in the weekends because I love what I do. But I did get to the point where I thought, actually, I need to be careful of that. Even though I love it, I still need to get a better balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Because the painting, while I love it, it still takes energy. And I get a bit obsessive about it. Like sometimes I'll have ideas and I just have to get them onto a canvas, and then I have to get that canvas finished.
Yeah.
Kind of see? And so, I'll be painting, and before I know it, it's 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, no, this is not right. I'm going to be too tired now. So I've had to be a bit more boundaried about, when I paint and how I do it. I might do the odd evening here and there, but I'll make sure that I kind of finish by a certain time.
Yeah.
Or work on a piece that's relaxing, not too challenging, and things like that. So it's all been a big juggle, but I kind of feel like we've got to a place where it's working. And I think the painting for me almost feels like my day.
Yeah, that's so good.
Being a mum and a psychologist, I give a lot and lots of listening and giving, whereas the painting, it's just nice to have a day where I tune out and can listen to music and paint. And so I'm quite protective over it.
Yeah, I bet. And we were just saying before we started recording that, you're used to hearing everybody else's life stories. So it's quite different for you to be actually speaking of your own life.
It's quite weird. Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a therapy session for you this time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So just talking about the psychology again with your art, I mean, how do you find, do you feel like you sort of do actually process some of the things that you experience in your clinical psychology work through your painting? Or do you feel like you're sort of actually, it's some sort of form of therapy, and you kind of do process certain things through your artwork? Is there a connection like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It almost feels like a therapy some days, sitting down to paint. It's not like a direct, so I specialize in eating disorders, and I don't really explore kind of themes like that in my artwork. But it's more of me personally, my therapy, to sit down and kind of, I find it really mindful, and not always, but when I can get into that flow, where I've got a cup of tea in my hand and the music's playing and I lose sense of time, I find that really restorative. So it's therapeutic in that way. And I find I've just got a really busy, active brain that likes to think really deeply about random things like climate change, for example, is the big one in my head. And I quite like getting that stuff down onto canvas. And I think my collection that I did in April in Royal Gallery, I did a lot of that work through the lockdown. And so a lot of that work for me was processing my experience of the lockdown. And for us, it was like we were learning to find joy with not much. So it was very much the focus of that show was all about that. It was about learning to find beauty and joy and things that are normally right in front of us that we'd overlook.
Yeah.
So processing that thing. So yeah, I think another example would be like earlier this year when Russia and Ukraine went into war, and there was some really disturbing footage on the news and things like that. I just one night said to my husband, I need to go paint. Poured myself a glass of wine, went down into the studio and just got it all out onto a canvas. And it wasn't necessarily like, anything strongly linked to the war, but in the end, that painting, funny enough, actually all ended up being in colours of blue and yellow.
Oh, really?
I planned that, and it was quite dark, way darker than I'd normally paint, with a real black undertone. So yeah, I think a lot of it gets channeled into
you're processing thoughts.
Yeah, in a subconscious way. Yeah.
And I guess a lot of artists are like that, in some way. Yeah. So just onto your painting practice, which is amazing, by the way. Can you describe to us what you like to paint and what your paintings are like for someone who's never seen your work?
Yeah. So they're normally quite big and on canvas. At the moment, I use heavy body acrylics. I used to use oils a long time ago, back when acrylic paints weren't quite as good. So I really like thick paint and bold colour. About 15, 20 years ago, acrylics used to be quite matte looking and they wouldn't dry in the same colour that they went down on the canvases. But now that acrylics have changed, I prefer those now because they're easier to use. They don't smell. Turpentine and all of that stuff. Yeah. My studio's in the house, so I don't know how my family would feel about turpentine wafting.
Yeah.
So I use heavy-bodied acrylics in a really thick way. I get through lots of paint and mainly paint landscapes and florals at the moment. Sort of get drawn to, things in nature that I might see. So lots of fields. Oh, sorry, something just popped up. Lots of daisy fields, gardens, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you show an entire landscape with possibly flowers within that, or normally flowers within it. And other times it's, a garden where you can see some grass and actual sort of shapes of garden. And then other times it's almost like you've sort of just taken a little zoom into a big area of garden, which is so beautiful, and they're really sort of full, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
In a good way.
And I really love exploring light and depth. So kind of my paintings, I will build up, often that's about 5 or 6 layers of paint. And I just love that process of kind of looking at what colour is in the background and then building it forward. create depth into them.
Yeah.
And I love light hitting trees for some reason. I'm just fascinated by that at the moment. So,
And I haven't seen you painting trees. Have you done that before?
not so much just trees on their own, but more trees in the background of a garden, or like magnolia trees, camellias, things like that, rhododendron trees. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And I mean, you're obviously drawn to that sort of floral idea. And as you say, the daisies do seem to pop up for some reason quite often. And do you ever, I mean, you do the abstract works as well, which can you tell us about the abstract paintings?
Yeah, I think they actually came from a painting that had light shining through trees. So they were sort of an abstraction of how light goes through foliage, and kind of just kept expanding down that line. And for me too, like, I'm quite an impatient, fast painter. So I like to get the paint down quickly. I don't like waiting around. And sometimes the really tight gardens with lots of detail, I need like a rest from them. So I'll then go into a more abstract piece or an impressionist piece to have a break, and I kind of alternate between the two styles. Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I don't like pigeoning myself into a kind of one style either. I know there's often like a pull in the art world to have your own style that you're known by, but for some reason I like the freedom of just being able to explore lots of different styles and
which is so great.
Change over time. So I imagine, right now I love painting gardens, but we'll see where they take.
That's interesting. I wonder where it will head. What we'll end up doing. I mean, your gardens are very much, you can really see that it's your work. And I think you probably already are quite known for that kind of work. But I wonder, do you feel like you'll hold on to that and then also explore other things, or can you see yourself moving away?
Yeah, not sure, but nice to know that it's kind of known that that's my work, because you never know when you're making it. They all look so different to me. I don't know. I do love the idea of kind of a lifelong study of something. I love how, like, some of the really old artists like Monet, he studied his own garden for years and years. And there's something quite cool in that kind of slowing down and studying that same content. But then I'm also I get bored easily and quite impulsive. So I imagine at some point I'll probably veer off and try other things.
Yeah.
So, right now I'm just drawn to florals and gardens and fields and things like that. I can't imagine changing in the next wee while, but hard to know years down the track where that will head.
And it's good to keep an open mind and sort of not make any, not be too specific about it, I guess, so that you can sort of just see where it takes you. And why do you think fields and gardens?
That's a good question. I think one of your pre-questions had that, and I had to think for a while and I wasn't quite sure. I think I'm always have been drawn to colour, and that's probably the one theme throughout all the years that I've painted, that I love colour and seeing how colours sit next to each other and exploring colours in a painting. So I imagine that these fields and gardens, for me, it's probably the pull of all that colour and life in one picture.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the things that draws me in. I just also in New Zealand, driving around and seeing beautiful landscapes and different colours and sunsets and lights, I just have always found really fascinating. I'm that really annoying person that's like, stop the car. Look, can we just take a picture of that? Or I'll be like, quite often we've been on holiday and I've stopped the car in a paddock and my kids are waiting in the car with my husband and I'm out taking pictures of a field or a beach or...
I think that's such a common thing with artists, isn't it? I've had so many of our guests have talked about that. I guess it's a thing that artists do, isn't it? Just look closely at things and
so that's sort of what pulls me at the moment. So that's probably why I'm painting all of that content. But so otherwise hard to know where the pull comes from. I read this book recently called Big Magic. You read that one?
Yes, I think I have. It's by
Gilbert.
Yeah, I have read that.
And she talks about creativity in all forms, like whether it's writing or painting or whatever, as being like these kind of little ideas of magic that find you and come into your head. And it very much feels like that sometimes. Like when I saw that question, what drives you to make that work? I was like, gosh, I don't know. And then I kind of thought it does feel a bit like what Elizabeth Gilbert says, that these ideas just kind of come into your head at some point.
Yeah.
And then it's like you take it or leave it.
That's right.
And for me, they'll kind of buzz around for a while. I'll be, going to sleep and it will be buzzing in my head, or driving somewhere and it's buzzing my head until I get it out. And at the moment, that just seems to be the ideas that keep buzzing into my head. As loopy as that sounds.
No, it sounds great. And it's so good that you can actually respond to that in that way.
Yeah.
And process what's sort of randomly coming into your head. It's so interesting, isn't it, the way your mind works? Yeah. And so I'm just thinking about your process, Rachel. Do you, you obviously, as you said, work on big canvases, a lot, but also small ones. Yeah. And how do you actually put the paint down? Because I sort of marvel at artists like you who have so much depth in their paintings and so many layers. And so can you talk us through how you actually start a painting and how you sort of work through the process?
Yeah, absolutely. I always start from images. So I'm not the type of painter that can just paint from my mind. So often I'll have a couple of images that I've photographed that I want to work from. And sometimes there might also be other images that it's the colour palette or something like that has inspired me. And then I start with a base layer that's very loose and abstract, often with very loud music playing. It's quite physical on the big ones, like you've got to get your arm up there or you're up on a chair and getting it down. And I get
what color is that layer often?
Normally, I sometimes get this wrong, but normally I try, because I don't like leaving any canvas showing. So I try and look to the back of the picture and see what's underneath. So often with gardens, it's quite dark. So it will be dark green or black. But if it's sky, it will be the light sky coming through. So it sort of makes me stop and look at the light first of all. So I will literally just do like a big whitewash for where the sky is going to go, dark for where the shadows are, get all that down. And that I'm learning that that's quite important. If I get that bit wrong, later on I have issues. I'm like, something's not quite working. And it's because I haven't got that light and dark bit correct. And then the next layer is more about form. So it's about, okay, that's now going to be the bush and that's going to be this. And I normally start in the background. So we'll start all the trees or whatever it is right in the distance and then move forward. I've done it the other way before and run into trouble.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I got all these daisies in the front, then you're trying to like fill them in.
Yeah. That's tricky. And do you actually draw in your shapes to start with?
Never. No. I sometimes might do a quick sketch if it's a commission and I'm feeling a bit more nervous that I want to capture something in terms of what the client's after. I will sketch it in, but normally I'm pretty free-handed with the paint.
Good.
And I sort of will evolve a painting as it goes, like I guess intuitive in that way, where I'll look at it and be like, something doesn't feel right. So I'll alter some colours or play around with light and things like that as I go. So for that reason, I sometimes find commissions a bit frightening because I'm like, oh God, what if I get halfway through and I don't like it? I'll be stuck.
Yeah, it's quite a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're having to go down a sort of, you've got the end product in mind, I guess, with the commission.
Yeah. So they kind of, most of them take their own journey, and it's weird because I'll have this picture in my head at the start. Okay, this is going to look like that. And often it looks nothing like what I imagined. It kind of finds its own shape or form. So, yeah.
And do you paint sort of, your final sort of more, I guess, the final layers are quite painterly and sort of thick and yummy and like you were saying with your paint. Is it like that all the way through, or is it sort of more of a flat paint effect, which then sort of becomes more painterly as you come forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it probably starts flatter, and then as I layer it, it looks more and more painterly, and then the bits right in the foreground I will do quite thick, as if they're right there.
Yeah, which is really beautiful. And that technique works so well with flowers, doesn't it? Because it just makes them feel so real, I guess.
Yeah. So I go through a lot of paint at the moment.
Yeah, I bet you do. And what do you do if you have a problem with the painting, or if you're not happy with a certain part? What do you do?
I have a big pile of ditched paintings, and I'm quite happy to do that. It's tricky if I'm on a time deadline. Sometimes I just have to figure it out and work through it. Most of the time I can push through. I've decided that the middle of my paintings is always quite ugly. And every painting I have, there's this part where I just think, oh no, this looks awful. And I have to remind myself, no, you're in the ugly phase.
Yeah.
And then you work through that and it comes together at the end. So definitely over the years building confidence with them. I think some of those paintings a few years ago, I would have been like, oh no, it's not working, paint over.
Yeah. And then, just pushing through the hard stuff and knowing that you're going to get through the other side.
Yeah, when I'm starting something brand new, like at the moment I've been exploring flower markets, and kind of like flowers and buckets and things like that. So I will do a few kind of loose paper kind of mock-ups just to get a feel for it first, and go onto a big canvas. But I probably don't do as much of that as I should, to be honest.
Oh, well, doesn't matter. I mean, whatever floats your boat, I guess.
Yeah, the impatient side of me just wants to get it up on canvas and not wait around.
Yeah. And do you have like quite a few paintings on the go, or do you work in collections, or how do you sort of figure it out?
A bit of both. So this year with the solo show, I just blocked out 4 months and just worked on one collection, and that was glorious. I just loved being able to paint and kind of not really worry about deadlines or anything like that for a wee while. And then at other points of the year, like at the moment, I've got some group shows coming up. I saw you at the Tiny Show a couple of weeks ago, in the King's College show. So with those ones, I normally then will just work on the painting and not so much do a collection. So a bit of both. But I think as I'm learning, I'm sort of finding that collections work a bit better for me, just to be able to. It's not so much that all the paintings necessarily fit together, but it's more that I just get to focus just on painting for a block of time.
Yeah.
So if I think about that kind of structure in my week, I can just focus on that rather than the getting it to the framer and varnishing it and dropping it to the gallery. And just, they don't sound like big things, but when you've only got a day and a half to do that stuff, that all takes time out of your day.
Yeah, totally. You have to factor that in, don't you?
Yeah. So it's quite nice to be like, cool, I'm going to get all the painting done and then I'll do that bit, get it photographed, and kind of, that worked quite nicely.
Yeah. And do you, when you're thinking about your solo show and developing a collection of paintings, do you decide on a sort of an overarching theme, or are you're going to be looking at gardens and then, or, do you have a thread that sort of connects them all in a big way, or is it just the floral theme?
Yeah, so this year was my first one, so it was all a bit of learning. And the thread that connected all of them, it was all from images that were around me in lockdown and in New Zealand. So it was called On My Doorstep. So it was all pictures that I had seen or been to. So it was beaches that we'd holidayed at and kind of daisy fields in our neighbourhood that we'd walked around during lockdown and things like that. It's all about that kind of finding beauty on your back doorstep and not having to go very far.
Which is quite personal, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was, so there were kind of like, obviously like beach ones and gardens and stuff like that, but that was the thread that connected them.
That's great. And I love the title, On My Doorstep. And speaking of titles, you have really lovely titles to your work. Some of them are Colour Me in Sunshine, Love Like This, Better Days, Forever, You'll Find Me Here, Old Friend. So, me reading those titles makes me think that you obviously have quite a deep connection to the painting, and sort of it's quite personal to you. So how do you come up with those titles, and what do they mean to you?
It's kind of different for every painting, but over the last year I listen to lots of music while I paint, and I just love music as well. And when I'm in the flow with painting, I quite like the rhythm you get into where you're kind of painting along to music. I used to dance a long time ago. I was a ballet dancer up until I was about 18. And I find there's something about painting and rhythm to music that gets you into a flow. I know that sounds really bizarre.
No, it makes sense.
A lot of the names of the paintings actually come from songs or artists that I've listened to while I've painted that painting.
That's nice.
Yeah, and the mood will be quite different depending on the painting. The On My Doorstep collection was actually all from music that we'd listened to on all of our summer road trips around the country. So it kind of pulled from lyrics. So a lot of them actually you'll find in like Kiwi songs. I think all of the titles were from Kiwi music for that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. That's brilliant. Yeah. And how do you sign your work?
I reckon that's probably one of my weaknesses. At the moment, I just use paint and I do my initials, and my married name is Wilkins. And then my maiden name is Mayne, which I still go by as an artist. So I use both. So I sign them RMW.
Ah, that's interesting.
And actually my full name at the moment is Rachael Mayne Wilkins. So it is actually my initials, but it ties it all in. So to me, it's like my art signature. It's got a bit of everything in there.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's so interesting. We've just started asking people about how they sign their work on the show. And it's such a fascinating, there's always a story behind, why the decision that artists make about writing their names. And where do you put it on the painting?
I tend to put it on the bottom right, but if there's a lot of flowers going on there, I'll put it on the other side. Sometimes I won't sign it at all if it just doesn't fit. I'll just sign the back. But I've decided that calligraphy isn't my strong point. I'm often like really messy, like writing that's hard to read. Or
oh, it doesn't matter though, does it? And is it in capitals or?
Yeah, all in capitals.
Yeah.
And then I'll always sign the back too, just the name of the painting, my name and the date.
Yeah, which is good. And how big is it?
Oh, probably depends on the size of the painting, but it's pretty small. I keep it quite. Yeah. I do like some artists though that use quite bold colour and kind of have like a bit of a signature. I'm quite liking that.
It's really interesting, isn't it, what people do? I think it is a sort of a decision that artists have to make on how they want to do that and what they're representing, I guess.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And then, so let's go on to the commercial side of your business, Rachael. So I know that you have a really lovely connection, as you said, with Turua Gallery in St Heliers in Auckland.
Yep.
And you have a website, and your Instagram page is really happening for you. So before we go any further, I have to ask you about that reel that went viral, and you got 71 million views. No, 7 million views, wasn't it?
Yeah, it just went crazy. So I laugh when you say that my Instagram page is going well, because it kind of was ticking along pretty standard, and then that reel went viral, and I literally had 30,000 new followers in a week.
That's crazy. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really
so tell me about that. Like, how did it happen, and what was the reel?
Well, I have a couple of friends that work in marketing, and every time I catch up with them, I'll just get a couple of tips, what should I be doing on my social media? And like a lot of people have been talking about, they said, oh, you need to be using video content. They're like, as an artist, just set up the phone behind you and you'll forget about it, and then you can just take little snippets to make reels. So I kind of got into the habit of doing that, and now have quite a lot of fun making them. And again, I think the music thing I quite like, because then you can put the music in.
Yeah.
So whatever I've been listening to in the studio, I can then incorporate into the reel, which I really like.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, at first I was like, oh God, I'm not great with IT. This is all a bit of a nightmare. But now I'm like, hey, now I know how to do them now, kind of. I'm all right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was playing around, and, they weren't really getting much action. And then one day I was like, oh, I haven't really posted anything on social media for a week or two. What have I got on my phone? And I had just had this really boring thing of me varnishing a painting on the floor. And I was pretty rough in this reel. I hadn't even brushed my hair. I literally chucked my hair in a top knot, paint-covered clothes on, and I just threw that on social media. I think it was 3 seconds long, and then forgot about it. And then a couple of days later, I went onto Instagram, and I was like, oh my God, what's happened?
And so did you just have like all these new followers, like just thousands of followers and
million notifications. I was like, what is going on?
Oh my God.
It's broken. And then so I went in, and at that point, I think it had hit like 200,000 views. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it just kept going. And over the course of like 3 weeks, like it just kind of kept going and going. And I had so much spam.
Yeah, I bet.
The weirdest messages and the weirdest stuff. We were actually on holiday at the time. And I was like, oh, at least I can take a break from social media. It's sort of just doing its own thing right now.
Yeah, it's feeding itself.
Yeah, but the interesting thing was, and it's been quite a good learning curve, I think prior to that, I sort of had a following of mainly artists or local Kiwis or Australian people actually interested in my art. And it was a manageable amount to kind of respond to. And since growing to that, there hasn't really been much change in terms of, print sales or things like that. And if anything, it just kind of has engaged quite a random international audience. So it kind of was a good lesson in that actually quality is much better over quantity, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, we're often told more with social media, like more likes, more followers, more everything. But I'm not really sure if that actually equals, more engagement with your business.
Yeah. Or people who really are engaging in a sort of authentic way, I guess.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting learning curve.
Yeah. And then do you feel like you've got more work to do on Instagram because of all the responses that you feel you need to make, or has that died down now?
There was a patch of time where it did feel like that. It's like, oh my God, this is a bit overwhelming. I don't have this time in the week. And then it's now just completely gone back to normal. You wouldn't even know it had happened. Yeah.
And do you think with your posts sort of that are followed on from that, is there more engagement in general because of your bigger following, or is it not really any different?
I think there probably is. I think it's probably gone up a bit. There were a couple of cool things that happened, like I sold a print one to the States and one to Japan and another to Austria. These random countries that I, had never made any sales to. So that was really cool to be like, wow, there's someone in Austria that wants to ship a print all the way.
Yeah, that's so great.
The other side of the world. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
But no, otherwise it's all just kind of come back to normal now. Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's interesting that it was just a 3-second reel.
It was
a really short one.
One of my friends said to me, she's like, no offense, but it's actually not even your best reel.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? So is it all about the algorithms? Is it just sheer fluke, or, what is it, I wonder, that made it go so viral?
It felt very flukish, yeah. There was like a little picture of my cat on the front page, but someone said maybe Instagram likes cats. I was like, possibly. So there you go. Someone wants to give it a whirl. Try a cat in there somewhere.
Who knows? And also the music. I have read that there's certain music, that you use, if it hasn't been used too often, helps with
Yes, I wasn't even that tech savvy with any of that stuff. I just, I like that song, that'll do.
Yeah. It's amazing. I find personally Instagram just is such a slow grower for me. It's just such a slow process to build followers. But then, like you say, I think my followers they do actually really care about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about putting yourself out there, I mean, I have been doing that a bit more, and it kind of sometimes I find annoying that if I'm the photo, then there's all this engagement, but it's not actually about the work that I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? But I guess it's connected.
It's weird, isn't it? It's like this thing with videos, like in a way it's a bit of a pain, isn't it? Like, why can't we just put a photograph of our artwork up? But so there's all these funny algorithms and things like that involved. It's a weird world, isn't it? I like to not kind of overthink it too much.
Yeah. And not get too engaged because it can dominate.
Yeah. It's a nice tool for marketing, but
absolutely. But you do a lovely job, and you are quite present in your you're definitely the face of the business, which is good, and you do that well.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, I never know. We're pretty new.
I know. No, you've done well. And how else do you promote your work? You obviously have your website where you can find your work.
Yeah, I keep it all pretty simple. I have a mailing list, which I'm pretty up and down about using. We've just had a winter of lots of viruses and sick kids and stuff like that. So some of that stuff I haven't been as on top of, but the mailing list that I try and send out emails when there's new work available or things like that. I rely pretty heavily on Tour Gallery in terms of if there's new work coming, I'll direct it to them. I think one of the things I've learned is that with working part-time, you can't do everything. So I just don't have time to be, sending out images and quotes and just all sorts of things. So where I can, I'll direct that back to the gallery and they will get in touch with people and put them on a database and they'll do all that following up for me, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. And that helps with the balance, doesn't it?
Yeah. The mailing list, Instagram. My website's pretty basic, but I do sell prints through the website. About once a year, I'll try and do a sale for my prints just to make art a bit more accessible. I find, it's nice to have artwork that people can have on their wall and afford. So I'll try and do a sale once a year to kind of bring that price point down a little bit.
Yeah, which is great.
Advertise that on Instagram. But yeah, that's kind of the main things that I use. Yeah.
And your work comes up so beautifully as prints, doesn't it?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I've used a photographer who captures them really well and seems to get all the details so they look very real, which is cool.
That's so good. Yeah, prints, they're just amazing now, aren't they, what you can get out of a print if you have the right photograph taken at the beginning.
Yeah, I was blown away by the detail that
it almost sometimes looks better than the actual painting. It's so,
Yeah. And sometimes, if you edit it and tweak it a bit, it's like, oh, that actually looks better than the real thing.
I'll do that next time. Yeah, exactly. And with your painting, Rachel, I mean, you obviously have a nice sort of family feel with the Tour Gallery and the artists who are a part of that gallery. But do you have any other kind of artist networks or sort of supporters who you go to if you're ever having troubles with things art-wise, or just as a sort of way to collaborate or to kind of connect artistically?
Not so much. I use my mum quite a bit. If I'm kind of a bit unsure about a piece of work, I'll pull her in and be like, what do you think? And she's great because she is really honest and encouraging at the same time. So I lean on her a bit for advice. My auntie is also an artist, so she gives me a bit of help and she's been great. But I do feel the one thing I notice that's different between my clinical psych work and my artwork is it is very much in a silo and you're quite isolated in your studio. One day I'd love to work in a studio, space with some other artists or something like that. We're just starting to connect with more artists around the area and getting to know them, but not a lot of face-to-face meeting. And it's interesting. I think part of the reason I quite like the balance between the artwork and the psychology work is because I'm quite an extrovert and really love being around people. I'm not sure if I could cope being in a studio on my own all week. So it's quite a nice balance. I work in a team as a psychologist and I've got great colleagues and get to see my clients all day who are lovely. So I get lots of work with people in that, and then the quiet time in the studio seems to work.
It's a lovely balance.
But yeah, I do find as an artist it's a little bit more isolated. There's not that, as a psychologist, we've got conferences and all sorts of support groups and training and all sorts. And there probably is all that with art. I just am yet to find it and kind of get into that a bit more.
Yeah, it is great to have a community of artists sometimes,
Yeah.
where you can go to and ask questions and get that support. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there are more of those developing in Auckland and New Zealand.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably because I didn't go to art school, I probably didn't have those connections from the start, I did as a psychologist, where I've still got friends that I studied with and worked with. And, when did I start training to be a psychologist? I've almost got 20 years of connections, whereas I've only dived into this art thing in the last 2 or 3 years. So I feel quite new.
Yeah. And that will develop those communities, I'm sure, over time.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, we're coming to the point of your final 4 questions, and you've already kind of answered one, so it's not going to be too hard.
Yep.
I'd love to hear who is your favourite artist of all time, or are there a number of artists who you love and who have possibly influenced your work?
Yeah, I found that question really hard because I I could probably name 100 artists that I like that have influenced my work. But probably the one that sticks out the most would be, it's a bit cliche, but would be Monet. And that kind of, there was an exhibition I went to in London at the Royal Academy of Art, the R&A, and it was called, what was it called? I think it was Painting the Modern Garden. And at the end of this exhibition, it had his 3 lily pad triptychs all in a room together for the first time ever. And it was just the most probably breathtaking piece of art I've ever seen. And I think for me, probably a highlight in terms of an artist's work that I've seen. So I would say that his work's probably the most influential. I also really like how he had this lifelong commitment to painting his garden and his craft. Like he just perfected his impressionist garden paintings his whole life. And there's something quite cool about that kind of slowing down and just focusing in on one thing and becoming really good at it and not jumping around all these different styles and mediums. And but otherwise I could probably name literally hundreds of other artists. My one regret is actually that I didn't study art history back at uni because it would have been so interesting to know a bit more.
Well, you can always go back to that. I mean, I think as you get older, well, for me personally, I'm just so much more interested in all of those stories and the history of art in general and artists. And I mean, I'd love to study art history now.
Yeah, I'd happily go back one day.
Yeah. Well, there's heaps of time. So thank you. That's a good answer, Monet. I can see the connection. And as an artist, what do you feel is your biggest challenge?
I think for me at the moment it's time. And that's just because I've had a year where I've kind of had a million of those ideas spark in my brain. And sometimes I think I could happily lock myself in my studio and just paint for hours and hours and hours, but don't have that time. So, and I think for me this year, a lot of making this art practice work has been, I guess, protecting that time and finding ways to make it work for me. So that's probably the biggest issue. Yeah.
And at least you know in the future the time you're going to hopefully end up with more time as your children get older and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Next year
they're starting school, so that means another short day of painting, which is great. So time is probably the big one at the moment.
And what would you say to your younger artistic self?
I think if I look back to when I was 17 and trying to work out what to do career-wise, I remember at that point feeling like if I don't apply to go to art school, then that's it for that career. It's done. And that being quite a black and white decision. And I think I'd go back and, just say that careers don't have to be linear. I think back when I was at school, there was this idea that you choose what you're going to study and then you become that career and you progress and that's what you do the rest of your life. And that's kind of what I'd seen a lot of with the adults in my life, that they'd all just sort of picked those careers and stayed in them. But now I would say that actually careers are much more about kind of trying things and seeing how they go and trying to see what fits for you, and that it's never too late to start something. And that it's possible to make it work to do 2 careers, as crazy as people might think that sounds.
Yeah, which is brilliant. And you're such a good role model for, how that can actually work. Yeah,
not always, but I'm still really passionate about the psychology career, and I just can't imagine ever letting that go. I love the work I do, love research, love all of that. So it hasn't really been a journey of, now finally I've got back to art and found my true calling or whatever.
Yeah, which is interesting because that is the story for some people, isn't it? That they, they finally find their true love or their true passion in art. But you've obviously got, 2 passions, haven't you?
Yeah, now the main thing is kind of like, how did I not do this as a bigger part of my life for so long? And part of me wonders why I waited until I had a 2 and a 4-year-old.
What was I thinking?
What about all that time in my 20s where
You had all that freedom.
Yeah, I just decided right in the busiest time of motherhood that, yep, I'm going to.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, but I also think it's helped me to be a better mum, because with that time in the studio to myself, I'm then re-energized and such a better parent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's probably why it's all happened around now.
Yeah, exactly. And, it wasn't the right time earlier, obviously.
No.
Yeah. Oh, well, Rachel, it's been lovely talking to you. It's such an interesting life you've had, and, your work is so beautiful, and it's amazing to hear how you actually have created a life of such balance, it seems, and are so passionate about two different things that actually kind of complement each other in a way.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been lovely to share my story and chat. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you.